Today I'm down on Flamingo Drive here in Miami Beach. It is just a beautiful neighborhood to walk around. It's always pretty quiet down here, not too much going on. And days like this are my favorite days to be out here making these videos, because when it's overcast like this, it's not so hot here in Florida. So it makes it pretty pleasant to be out walking around. And speaking of Florida, we have a lot of Florida-specific news to cover today. And the big one is that Florida is proposing a bill that will ban foreign investment, but specifically restrict Chinese buyers and people from other communist countries buying real estate here in Florida. The proposal is this: the bill would ban any Chinese nationals who are looking to buy any sort of real estate here, doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential. This also applies to Chinese businesses and people who live in China and aren't US citizens or residents and who currently own real estate in Florida would not be able to buy additional property after July 1st if this bill passes. And any current Chinese owners of real estate here in Florida would need to register their properties with the state, and they're comparing this to Hitler's 1938 decree that required all Jews in Germany and Austria to register their properties. But I think we can all agree that the reasoning here is way different. But anyways, they're comparing it to that because that's what the news likes to do. And right away, the pushback from this is, well, what about the Chinese students that come to study here? A lot of their parents like to buy, a condo for them to live in while they're here studying. That's like the first thing that real estate agents are bringing up, of course, because that eats into their sales. And I shared this with you guys before, and the number one buyer in the state of Florida is China, guys, right now, okay? China buys more real estate here in Florida than any other outside country. And real estate agents are worried about students not having a place to live while they're here studying in college or whatever. I mean, that is the worst excuse that I've heard in a long time. First of all, there's opportunities to rent. There's nothing restricting them from renting a place. And also, haven't you ever heard of the dorm? So there's that. And within this bill, it's not just targeted at China. In fact, this would also ban foreign nationals from buying here from Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria from purchasing agricultural land in the state of Florida. And would also ban foreigners from those countries from buying land within 20 miles of a US military installation of critical infrastructure. Hey, look at that, guys. Want some old golf clubs? Just there on the curb. I don't golf, so could care less. Now, some people are worried about the precedent that this might set, and it could potentially put us on a slippery slope in terms of assuming that anyone from China has bad intentions when it comes to buying real estate here in Florida, which I don't think that's the case at all. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure many of the Chinese people are nice people and don't have any bad intentions when it comes to buying real estate here. But I'm sure a lot of this was spurred from the whole Chinese balloon situation that happened recently. Florida seems to be the leader right now in terms of doing a lot of the things that the federal government doesn't want to or just won't do. Now, another concern that's being brought up about this bill, apparently it would have a major impact on property ownership because it would allow the state to seize and sell illegally owned property. So I'm not even sure what they mean by this, because earlier it said that if you are Chinese, for example, and you own property here, then you just won't be allowed to buy more property. Didn't say anything about, having the property you already own taken away from you. And another thing to note from this is that this won't have any effect on people that have the EB-5 visa. So foreign investors that have an EB-5 visa will be exempt from this.
Now here we have this house. It's another flip. They've been trying to sell it since November of 2022, originally listing at almost $4.7 million. Latest listing price is $3.9, but they have it temporarily off the market. They also tried to rent it, no luck there. And of course, let's take a look at the almighty property taxes. Now you can see with this house, the property taxes did not jump by as much as some of the other examples we've seen. Back in 2018, they were paying $24,000 a year, and as of today, they're paying $33,000 a year. But the reason for that is because the property last sold before this person bought it for $1.8 million, which is not far away from what they purchased it for. So when you don't have that large gap in purchase price between the previous owner and the new owner, you're not going to see the property taxes jump quite as much.
So at the moment, a lot of people who are speaking out against this agree with the ban on purchasing any type of agricultural land or land that's near military bases. Seems like pretty much everyone's on board with that. But a lot of people are against the idea of banning China specifically from buying real estate here, as well as some of the other countries that we talked about, because they say it's highly discriminatory. All right, it is, no doubt. It is discriminatory. But last time I checked, it's also discriminatory for the Biden administration to help low-income and low-credit borrowers at the expense of high-income, high-credit borrowers when it comes to getting a mortgage. Isn't that discriminatory? I mean, doesn't that help a specific group and hurt another one? I mean, that's what discrimination is after all, isn't it? I mean, the way I see it, guys, without really getting political about it, just from more of a national security standpoint, according to this data, Chinese buyers accounted for 6% of all foreign U.S. real estate residential purchases from April 2021 to March 2022, and that's data according to the National Association of Realtors. These buyers spent a total of $6.1 billion on those deals. So I would say that 6% of the total sales in a year's time span is pretty significant. Obviously, that's not anywhere near the majority or anything like that, but it's a large enough percentage that I think it's something that at least needs to be looked at. And the reason why I think that it could be a security concern is because tensions have been ramping up with China and Russia, and it's not really smart to let people that we're not exactly friendly with, be buying up all of our land and our real estate here. The government always wants to have this huge budget when it comes to the military, and this is something that they can change with just the stroke of a pen. No military interaction necessary, you know what I'm saying? And so I think there is some merit to implementing something like this instead of always trying to handle things like the tough way, you know what I mean? I guess my biggest issue with it personally, just like when we got involved with this Russian-Ukrainian war deal, the US put sanctions on Russia, and that is helping to accelerate the downfall of the dollar, because a lot of other countries were like, hey, if they can do that to Russia when the US doesn't get their way, well then maybe they can do it to us too and hurt our purchasing power, since we rely on dollars too. So it's a legitimate concern for other countries to think about stuff like that. But at the same time, going for a straight out ban, just say you're banned, you can't buy real estate here anymore, is kind of like a push in that same direction, right? It's similar to a sanction where they're saying, oh, well, you can't trade oil or you can't buy things in US dollars anymore. This is kind of the same thing, and it kind of is like stoking a fire almost in a way, right? You're pushing buttons of the other country by saying, yeah, by the way, you're banned, you can't buy real estate here. And it sort of just escalates tensions rather than de-escalates. So I'm not saying that banning or not banning is the right answer. I mean, I don't really know, guys. I'm not a politician, and one thing we know for sure is our politicians usually don't have the right answers either. Let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think Florida should be doing this and looking at banning Chinese buying with real estate here? And like I said, it applies to other countries too, like Russia and Iran and other places that are communist countries that aren't really friendly with the US. And speaking of all of that, let's talk about the latest numbers from Florida real estate sales, because we covered this in a video about a month ago. So I'm trying to cover this for you guys every month when the new figures come out, and it gives us a clear picture of the direction that the market's headed here in Florida. Even though this has been one of the most robust housing markets throughout the entire country, even up until now, we are starting to see things hit a wall a little bit. It's definitely slowing down. Let's take a look at the single family home stats, okay? Closed sales are down 15% year over year, and this is as of March, the March figures. So we're always looking at the previous month. Sales paid in cash, down 24%. If you look at the amount of sales that are happening, the cash sales for these single family homes account for roughly a third of all of the sales that are being closed here in the state. So that's pretty significant, guys. And that's one of the main drivers of keeping this real estate market so robust, because if you took away those 1/3 of cash transactions, that would be a pretty significant drop, even more in closed sales. I mean, the closed sales figure is already down 15%. Closed sales could be down by more than 30% if you got rid of all the cash buyers. Median sale price, however, still up by 2.1%, but you see you're not seeing these crazy numbers anymore, and that's a year-over-year figure. The average sale price, interestingly enough, is actually down by 2.1%. So it's interesting to finally see some of these Florida numbers go negative. Dollar volumes down by almost 17%. People are not paying full price for listings. They're getting about a 4% discount. The time to sell a house has gone up 288%, which is a massive increase in the amount of days on the market. Same thing goes for the actual closing time for the sale. That's up by 57%. Pending sales down by 12%. New listings down by almost 13%. Pending inventory down by almost 20%, but actual inventory, the amount of inventory on the market as a whole, is up 115% year over year, guys. And the month supply of inventory is also up 170%. So these figures, I would say overall, are very good news for people that have been waiting to buy a home in Florida. Does it mean that this is the greatest time ever to buy and it's cheap now? Absolutely not. But does it mean that you're sitting in a whole lot better situation than you were a year ago? Yes, it does. Now, what about condos? Let's take a look. Closed condo sales down by 23.5%, an even steeper drop than single family homes, okay? The amount paid in cash down by 26%. And if we look at these figures, guys, the total closed sales from last year to this year, the amount of condos that are bought paid in cash accounts for roughly half of all of these transactions throughout the entire state of Florida. That is huge. I think a lot of people don't realize the scale and the gravity that that figure alone has on our market here. I get people that say all the time, like, well, my area of Florida is still expensive, it's still booming. That's the reason why. People are dropping massive amounts of cash into the state, and many of them don't live here. They're either foreign nationals, like from China, for example, a lot of them from South America, a lot of them from Europe as well. You also have a lot of domestic rich people that buy real estate here from New York and California and Illinois and other high-income areas that drop the cash here in Florida.
I swear about 90% of the listings we come across on these walks are flips, and this one is no exception. They bought this place in 2021 for $3.4 million, and then you're going to see the power of property taxes jumping here, because you see the previous owner before them paid $2.1 million, and now they're asking $5.5, which is insane. The neighbor couldn't even sell for $3.9. But anyhow, look what happened to their property taxes. It went from $27,000 a year up to over $50,000 as of 2022. Now, that is a crazy bill, and that does not include anything else, guys. We're not talking about yard maintenance, utilities, upkeep, anything like that. Just $50,000 a year in property taxes.
Interestingly enough, when we keep looking at these figures, the sales prices for condos are actually holding up better than single family homes. You got median sale price still up by 3.9%. Average sale price is still up by 1.1%. Not much there, but still slightly up. And I think the main reason for that is just because condos are flat out more affordable than single family homes, so you have more people leaning into buying those versus single family homes. It's pretty much that simple. Dollar volume though, also down by 22%. That is significant. Median time to contract is also up by quite a bit, 163%. Median time to sale up 34%. New pending sales down by 19%. New listings down by 9.6%. Pending inventories down by 24%. Active listings though is up by 107%, basically double what it was a year ago. Also great news for buyers, and the month supply of inventory is also more than double than it was a year ago, up 183%. So things are moving in the right direction for this housing market to correct. There's a lot of theories on what's going to happen with Florida real estate. You know, a lot of people think that it's going to come crashing and burning here because that's what happened during the 2008 crash. Other people think that it's going to hold up because of how strong the demand is to be here. I think the end result's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. I don't think we're going to see home prices in Florida crash by 50% like we did the last time around. And the only reason for that is because we don't have the inventory that we had last time. I remember pretty well, because I had just gotten into the real estate business back then, that Miami was full of brand new developments that were empty, guys. Like, you're talking thousands and thousands of empty condos and townhouses, and even brand new houses like this that they're building behind me here, and no one lived there. And that was all available at a time when the economy took a turn for the worse. When you combine those two things together, that's a recipe for a 50% crash. But this time around, we don't have all that empty inventory sitting around that was, you know, way overbuilt. So I don't think we're going to see a 50% crash this time around, but I do think it's possible to see at least a 20%. That's kind of like my go-to number for the overall housing market crash, is a 20% decline in most areas, except for the most robust areas that just are not affected by the economy as much because, you know, too many people have too much money in those areas and they can still afford to support prices, okay? But most of Florida is not that rich when you're looking at how much the average homeowner or resident earns as an income versus where these home prices are at. And if the economy gets worse and a lot of these cash buyers start taking off, which we're already seeing, you know, the cash transactions are down by 26 and 24% respectively in just a year. And the official recession hasn't even begun. So the way I see it is, once things really start getting bad with the recession, then you're likely to see those cash figures drop far more than that, maybe 50, 60, 70%, okay? And that can be enough to bring home prices down even further, because those cash buyers are such a huge chunk of the demand for real estate here in Florida. Now, like I told you, this video is going to be pretty much all about Florida. And one of my loyal subscribers, DJ, he sent me another story here about another change that the Florida House is trying to pass with the House Bill 133. And what this bill does, it's supposedly designed to help more people get into rentals, like being able to rent an apartment if they don't have the full amount of security deposit they need to move in. Like, for example, most units here, you have to pay first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit to move in, and that's typically equal to 3 months' rent. So if the rent is $2,000 a month, you're looking at $6,000 to move in. And since a lot of people don't have that kind of money, this bill is supposed to allow landlords and tenants to waive security deposits, maybe even the last month's rent, and in lieu of that, they would actually just pay a monthly fee towards the landlord. They can either use it to buy a type of landlord insurance that will cover them in case the tenant defaults, or they can just save it on their own, and that would be in exchange of a security deposit, for example. So the idea here is it's supposed to benefit the tenants that don't have the $6,000 to move in right away, and instead they could just pay a monthly fee. And it's estimated that based on a $1,500 a month lease, then their payment would be about $25 monthly extra to the landlord for not having paid this extra security deposit in last month's rent. Now, do the math, guys. An extra $25 a month across the span of a year is only $300, okay? So that's a far cry from collecting the additional $3,000 that the landlord would need to. They'd be pretty much forced to use that money towards an insurance policy that would cover them in case the tenant defaults. Now, the people who are speaking out against this are saying this is a bad idea because what this is just an extra tax on the poor people that don't even have the money for these things. And also, since it's not a security deposit, you're not going to get that money back when you leave the rental versus, when you have the security deposit, if you leave the place in good shape, you can get it back. So you get some extra money when you move out. But the supporters of this bill are saying, deals like this are already happening. We're just trying to frame it up to put some guardrails in place so that way people don't get taken advantage of. And as someone that's done a ton of rentals down here in Miami, I've moved in hundreds and hundreds of people over the years into rentals and out of rentals, and deals like this were already going on. I've already dealt with different situations where the tenant said, well, I don't have the last month's rent, I only got 2 months, and you make a deal where that last month's rent is spread across like maybe the next 3 to 6 months of rent payments. So they pay extra for the first 3 or 6 months of the lease to actually catch up and have that last month's rent paid off. And then after that, the rent goes back to the normal price. And the other thing is, it's always negotiable, guys. Like, this isn't going to set anything in stone. You can make a deal with the landlord where you pay a fee, or you can make a deal with the landlord where you just pay the upfront move-in costs and that's it, like it's always been done before. So I don't know why people are getting all worked up about this, because all it kind of does is frame up something that's already been happening for a really long time. I mean, personally, if I'm the landlord facing this decision of whether or not to let someone move in with this extra payment each month, or just collecting the money up front like in the past, I would choose collecting the money up front every single time like in the past. And the reason's simple, guys, because the amount they're gonna have to pay extra is not anywhere near what it would be for a security deposit. And if you had to use that money to buy an insurance, well, now you're just setting yourself up for more headaches, because if they do default or they just leave the lease early or whatever and leave you holding the bag, you don't have anything to show for it, and then you have to go through the ridiculous process of filing an insurance claim, which is something I don't want to do. I don't want to file any insurance claims if I don't have to, because it's a pain in the ass, and anyone who's ever filed any type of insurance claim knows that it is. And I don't want to be fighting with insurance companies to get my money back from a tenant who's stiffing me. I would rather just have collected the money up front, like, okay, you're stiffing me, you can leave, whatever, I'm keeping your deposit and your last month's rent. It's that simple. And it just simplifies the deal. Kind of like a cash transaction versus a finance transaction, Will this be able to help some people that can't afford the full upfront costs of moving into a place? Sure, probably. But how many landlords are going to accept this and make this sort of deal with tenants? I don't know. But as you can see, lots of things are changing here in Florida when it comes to the overall market, to where things are going with the landlord and tenant laws, as well as, this whole Chinese buying ban. Like, things are changing pretty rapidly here, which is kind of astonishing because, as someone who's lived here for a little over 15 years now, like, for the longest time, things were pretty stable here in terms of not much changed, like you're seeing now with all these things that we just talked about. And now it seems like we live in an era where things are changing at warp speed, and there's basically nothing you can do about any of it. And all the ideas and things that are being proposed now are so much more extreme than before. And it's like kind of insane, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here. And I'll see you in the next one.